Welcome to the Process Podcast with Rod Howard, where artists, entrepreneurs, and visionaries share their stories and insights on creativity, world events, and personal journeys. Get ready to deep dive into the minds of those shaping the future. Today, we'll be getting the opportunity to chat with Executive Director of Just Communities of Arkansas and founder of The Yarn, Hillary Trudell. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. What sparked your love for storytelling and community engagement?
Wow. So I feel like the storytelling spark probably in my mind came before the community engagement spark. But when I look back on it, I think one of the reasons I like live theater and live performances is because it brings people together. So maybe they were actually moving side by side the whole time. I used to put shows on in my backyard when I was 7 years old. So, I don't know if I necessarily would say that as storytelling at that moment when I was a child, but I've always liked live shows because I thought, oh, so it brings people together. Now, my background is in theater, and so the element of a story has always been fascinating to me. And think what really continued to bring me into theater and to hold my interest was the ability of a story to make someone feel something, to connect with another human being or another human being's story on a really visceral level. Like I feel something because of this story that I'm experiencing, whether it's on stage or I'm hearing it or I'm reading it. And it's not my story, right? But I'm able to connect with this person, even if it's not a real person, right? Even if it's watching a play or, reading a novel. And I think that ability for storytelling uh, to give us a sense of empathy, essentially. I can connect to this individual because something in this really taps into who I am as a person, my values, my dreams, my hopes, whatever it is that is in that story that's making me feel something. And I think that is a really basic human trait that is the reason that one of the major reasons that we've been telling stories since we began communicating. There's a lot of reasons we tell stories to educate, to pass on history, to inform. But I think the connection element of it is the thing that kind of keeps us coming back for more. And the community building that has come from the storytelling, come from bringing people together and giving them an opportunity to connect through story. Uh, I don't know, it's just been magical. And ever since we started doing it, I felt the energy. There's a lot of just feeling of what it does within a community when you bring people together and give them an opportunity to connect with each other. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's been, I've been doing it for a while. I think the love of story has always been in my blood. And the the fact that storytelling has the ability to bring people together and build community, I think just makes it icing.
Man, that's awesome. And I know I always put an intro on the front, but for people that may not be aware of all the things that you're doing, like from doing the stuff with yarn and then the work you did the Clinton Library, all the other stuff. You mentioned being a little kid like a while ago. When you were a kid, did you ever imagine, was it even possible for you to imagine all the things that like your love of storytelling, the doors it would open up for you to be able to do?
No, and, when I think about being a theater major in college, I definitely had I don't know that I was thinking too much about my future, but I had a lot of people, mention things like, "Oh, you're gonna be unemployed," or "Being a theater major is not practical or a needed thing," right? But I do think that within the field of theater, whether it's theater or film or journalism or songwriting or, the arts are all about story, right? But the element of story is in a lot of different fields. So the fact that I was studying how to tell a story and what makes an effective, compelling story in college through theater um, has given me skills that it seems are so needed right now because of our disconnectedness. And no matter how technology advances and how we might have the ability to connect across time zones and across the world based on technology, our innate desire to connect with each other has and will always be there. I think it is fundamental to who we are as people. We are not isolated animals. We are group living pack animals, right? So we want to be able to look at another person and say, I see you in me, right? And so I think I never thought that I would be doing this. Um, I don't know that this is necessarily like when you're being asked, what are you going to be when you grow up? I don't know that I would ever think leading a storytelling organization intent on, changing hearts and minds and bringing people together was really in my psyche. I wanted to be like a mermaid or a marine biologist. Um, But there's also, I think, the beauty of the world we live in now. One of the great things that is potentially possible that hasn't been possible in the past is that people can create jobs that maybe weren't possible before, right? And or fill needs that we didn't have before because we had a different society or a different world. So I never really thought I'd be doing this, but I'm also not surprised that I'm doing something having to do with storytelling.
Yeah. I feel like you answered this next question for me a little bit already, but I'll just ask it again to kind of react.
Yeah, let's do it.
But it's like, so you worked in everything from like Broadway caliber productions to like public service to like all that. So what's the common thread between all these different things that you've done or that you're currently doing?
Yeah, I think it's a question I ask myself often, in terms of what does this trajectory mean? I I think there's two parts of it. I think the overarching thread is connection. And I think the kind of the secondary part of that is positive social change, positive social change, excuse me, because even the theater element, right? When I was working at the Kennedy Center, when I was working at Arena Stage, when I was working to bring plays to the stage or working to, bring these Broadway caliber productions to the stage, as you say, it was still only really interesting to me when there was this opportunity to connect through that story, right? I was always interested in the shows or the plays, the productions that had, and most of them do because stories have human elements to them. But this ability to think about our world or our choices or our values and really say, like, who do we want to be? Is that me? Do I want to be different? Am I proud of this? Can I connect with that character because of who they want, of what they stand for? And so I think at the end of like when I look at my life and I look at my professional choices, it's been about making the world a better place through bringing people together. And whether that's hearing a story physically together or I just hear your story and I'm able to connect on that emotional level, I think it's about building community through storytelling, and that's, like, more blatantly what I'm doing now, but even when I think about the theater and the public service and working for nonprofits, it's how do we see each other as human? How do we see each other's humanity and respect each other's dignity? And through our lived experiences, even if they're completely different, find those spots to reach in and say, "This is where we connect because of our humanness." I think that's what the beauty in the arts is. It's really examining who we are as people. Um, yeah, I think that's a non-elevator pitch of what my trajectory has been, those threads.
No, that's so cool, like, hearing that and even hearing more about, like, just your origin story, superhero origin
Oh,
story,
yeah.
because it's, like, especially, like, now that you, like, fast forward, you start The Yarn, which is a really cool program where it gives he empowers people to tell these stories and try to create that empathy that you kinda spoke of. So, like, with The Yarn, what kind of went into you deciding to take all these experiences that you had as a kid or as an adult? What kind of led you to from going from there to creating this organization, well, telling your own stories to create an organization that empowers people to tell their own?
Yeah, so and I love that you brought back the empathy. I think empathy is, like, actually one of our greatest superhuman powers, right? It actually is something that separates us from machines, even though now, AI is getting really amazing at potentially even creating empathy in itself. I'm not in that field, but it has done amazing things, but we as humans have that ability to connect even though our lived experiences are different because we understand these basic human emotions, right? Empathy is about being able to understand a human emotion in another person. And uh, that's all about what storytelling is. So, to your question, I used to have kind of this idea that it was the arts were like this lane and the kind of social justice advocacy work that I wanted to do with this lane. And I didn't see a lot of overlap. This is when I was younger, my early 20s. And it really was when I went back to DC after I went to the Clinton School and I got my master's. I went back to DC and I went to a show that was a storytelling show. And it was, I forget what the theme was. It might have been the Swan Song, kind of like that was the whole theme. And so all these people were going on stage, kind of talking about their swan songs and kind of like their was it like Hail Mary is the kind of the last thing that they were gonna do, in a situation or their life, and I remember being kind of blown away by it because 'cause I'd never been to anything like that. I'd never been to The Moth or, just a storytelling show like that before, and I just the place was packed, people were laughing, people were crying, people were feeling emotions of human emotions based on these stories that people were telling. And I thought, what an amazing way to bring humanness to groups of people or individuals or causes that are seen as the other, are seen as, in some ways, not human or just, bad or wrong or just different to the extent that people think there's nothing there that has anything to do with me. And so I started incorporating storytelling into my work at the Human Rights Campaign. And from there, moved here and started the yarn and working on bringing stories on all different sorts of themes to the airwaves and to the stage to just create that opportunity for connection.
Something that's also cool about a cool stat I didn't realize. I know you've done a lot of different yarn productions, but you coach over 250 people in storytelling. Like, what do you so, like, going through that, hearing all these stories, like, what do you think makes a story impactful?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And at this point, it's probably more, I mean, I stopped counting around 350. So it's just been one of the privileges of my life is the honors of my life, I should say, is people trusting me with their stories. And I talk about this in our workshops. Telling a story requires vulnerability because you are usually talking about a challenge that you had or something that you wanted that you didn't get or in some way, an obstacle in your life that could bring out, feelings of, tenderness or past trauma even. There's a lot, especially when we start talking about our upbringing and our family, there's a lot there that can be emotional. And so even people telling me their stories, has been just this amazing gift because that requires, them to trust me. And so I know that's not what you were asking, but just in terms of thinking of all those people, it's really been an honor. And I will say, you know, what makes a great story, it, it does not have to be told by a professional storyteller. It does not need to be told by a performer, a public speaker. some of the most affecting stories I have heard have come from people who've never told a story before, who've never spoken publicly before. One of, I think, the most affecting stories in a live show was told by someone who had never spoken in public before. But within it, there was a real sense of grappling with the humanness of who that person was. She was dealing with a decision of what to do in a situation, and it was so real, and she was exposing herself to this group of people in a way that wasn't, oversharing, but it was grappling with this decision on a really big thing in her life, and she had not come to a decision yet, and so she was really opening up and inviting the audience in to her grappling with who she was in that moment and what she wanted to do moving forward. And it was that there's just a sense of real trust to a group full of people, a room full of people that was beautiful. And the audience just, you could feel them embracing her. And it was not even audibly, but you could just feel that connection. And so I do workshop on storytelling. We talk about what makes an impactful story, but I also want to just kind of note that if you are willing to be open and kind of receive the energy of the people that you're around, and this sounds really woo woo, but there's so much energy that can come into play when you're being open with another person. And so that's the first step, being open, I think.
It's also like, I was gonna ask this and kind of brought the thing, but it's like you have like watching those yarns, like a lot of those stories on there are like really, really personal. Like, how are you able to coach people to be able to tell those stories in a way that like where it is like empowering and
Mhm.
not necessarily re-traumatized? Because a lot of those there's some really intense stories, but it's like the way you're able to kind of talk to people about it. It's like they can go up there and share the story and like feel the sense of pride. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how are you able to kind of do that? Like coach people when you're doing it?
Yeah, it's a really great question and a really important question because, there are a lot of ethics around storytelling in terms of, and one of the major things you want to make sure as a story coach, or I want to make sure as a story coach that I never do, is create more trauma for the person who's telling the story. And so I talk about, at the beginning of anytime somebody is about to tell me their story, these are the steps. And so we'll talk about it and then we could potentially put it on the air. We could potentially talk about a live show. But at any point, if you decide this doesn't feel good for you, then you have like my full, like this is what I want you to do. Right. And I also talk to them a lot about pass. And I say, in this situation, like I welcome the passes. If I ever ask you a question that you do not feel comfortable talking about, like I want you to tell me pass because this is your story. And I also talk about many times we go down these roads that we haven't been in a while and we don't realize the landmines that are over there. We don't realize what's gonna come up. I talk to a lot of people who I haven't talked about this in forever, or I haven't thought about that in forever, or oh my goodness, I don't know why I'm crying right now, right? And I'm not a therapist. I want to make that very, very clear. I am not a therapist, but a lot of storytelling, especially person storytelling, it is a lot of exploring, especially at the beginning. What is that story? And so you have to kind of dig into the space around it to find what the story is. I also tell people, especially when I'm doing workshops, there is a difference between a scar and a wound. And sometimes it's a wound, and we actually don't need to be telling that story right now or in this space, you know, in this format. And we're not ready to tell that story, and that's okay. And we might not know that until we kind of get a little further down, and then we kind of have to back out of it. And so every time I'm doing storytelling workshop and I have people partner up, I make sure that they're checking in with both themselves and the other person because we don't want to create another set of, trauma experiences to go through. And so I tell my storytellers, We need to be able to identify what's a wound and what's a scar. And if it's a scar, we can usually talk about it. Um, and if it's still a wound, sometimes it's not a good time.
Mm. You know, one last thing about the yarn before I kind of move on. Like, I've I had the opportunity to do two of them, not to brag. Yeah, but I did two of them, and like,
And on stage, you've done at least 3, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, man, it's exciting. It's like
Yeah.
what's cool is I thought, like, not me fooling myself. I thought I was a good storyteller because I all of the book,
Are.
but on the front end, I thought I was good because I played music and stuff. But man, when I start working with you, you do this like voodoo type thing. You know what I said? Where you like you find the stories, and but it's like when I left out of those yards I participated. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm a way better public speaker, and I'm also better at being able to extract those stories out of people. But with you, you go through this process where you listen to everything and you say, no, that's the story. Like, how are you able to like just go through and be like, okay, that's it, that's compelling. Let me
That's
hear it.
so right. Yeah. First of all, you are a great storyteller, and I'm a big fan of all your work. So I feel like that was before me too. So you're a wonderful storyteller. Um, I wish I had like an XYZ answer, like, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This is how you identify a good story. And there are elements, right? We can break it down into elements. Do I care about what this person wants? Has this person shown me what they value, right? What is this story even about? Is that clear? Do we understand what their goals are? Is this person kind of showing me an opening to connect with them? Um, a lot of it is intuitive as well. And I think that probably exists in most people, that you can hear someone talk and you understand when you start being pulled into it. And there's a moment, um, and sometimes more than one, where you can feel it. So I wish that I could give you a kind of prescriptive way to understand it. And there are books on that as well. Like, this is how you tell a good story. And we absolutely talk about those elements, but there is also what is the thing that's that, and when I watch a storyteller, when do they light up? When do they potentially get a little bit pensive or even a little bit emotional? And um I'll there are times when I have to dig broad, and I don't want to say deeper, but like, what is the whole story? And so, that's why I like to have longer conversations at the beginning to really figure out, what is this about, right? What is this story about? And it could be, we're doing a maternal health storytelling project right now. So all of the stories are about maternal health, but what is this story about? Is it about being heard? Is it about being seen? Is it about the feeling of belonging? Is it feeling about self-acceptance? Is it, um, you know, fulfilling a dream? Like, what is the human element of what the story is about? And it's once I can figure that out with the storyteller, then we have a theme and we have a path, right? So there's kind of multiple ways that I identify it, but a lot of it is also instinctual.
So we talked about, the yard. So like on top of like running the yard and doing the storytelling, training and all the other stuff, you're actually like right now the executive director of Just Communities of Arkansas. So man, how did that come about and what are you guys doing over here? Cause I know y'all do a lot of stuff right now.
Yes. So I am the executive director of Just Communities of Arkansas since I started that job in the fall, or excuse me, not the fall, the spring, January to be precise, of 2022. Um, how did that come about? I always really admired the work of Just Communities of Arkansas. When I was in grad school, they used to have something called the Walk for Community that we're actually bringing back, but got all these people from the community together, and people from different backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses and just, genders, religions, races. And it just felt like a real community building element, event. um, and I think that's what attracted me to it, right? I'm also a facilitator, and a facilitator most of my professional life too. And we lead a lot of workshops, and a lot of what facilitation is bringing people together, level leveling power dynamics, and making sure every voice is heard. So that's also a lot of what the yarn is about. So I was attracted to JCA's work. And since I've been the executive director, surprise, surprise, I've incorporated storytelling into the work we do a little bit more because I do feel like so much of what we were doing already, JCA was doing already, it's about human connection, and storytelling, in my opinion, is a really great vehicle to get to that goal. So right now we are working on a few initiatives. We're bringing back Our Town for Teens, which is a leadership development camp that's going to happen in October, and it's for high schoolers, um, 15 through 18. And it's a 4-day overnight camp where young people will go and learn about how to connect with other young people who have differing experiences. So they'll learn about how to tell their own leadership story, and they'll really develop skills to listen to other people's stories so that they can really go out into our community and be inclusive leaders moving forward. So that's one. And then the Maternal Health Storytelling Project, which is a collaboration with the RI, is another. So we are collecting stories of women who have had experiences with pregnancy, fertility, birth, postpartum challenges, anything really having to do with bringing a child into the world or trying to, or in some cases, not. We want to make sure we're bringing those stories to the forefront of our Kansans so that we can really understand the nuances and challenges and triumphs of women when it comes to maternal health. We're having a real bad crisis in the country in terms of maternal mortality, and Arkansas is not doing well. We're number one, if not number one, number two in maternal mortality, which is not good. So we really want to bring attention to the myriad ways that women can overcome, and in some cases not, really big challenges with maternal health. We also want to build a community of storytellers, of women that are able to support one another, to share resources, to educate, and really just hold each other up as, go through this journey together. So that's our second. And then we are hoping to bring back, last year we did it for the first time in a while, our Walk for Community and Unity Walk that we're hopefully going to be doing again in the fall.
That's awesome. So I promise I got like just 3 more questions.
That's it. Now I have
All right.
fun. It's great.
So I got to talk about this too. You spent time at the Clinton School. How do you feel like your time there has shaped the other things that you do?
Yeah, so I was a student in the Clinton School. I graduated in 2012 with my master's, and then in 2015, I came back and worked at the Clinton School for about 7 years. So I've spent about 9 years either a student or an employee at Clinton School. So that organization, that school, has really been impactful in my journey. I'd say as like a public servant. When I was a student, I think a big part of my learning, or I should say my development as to who I am socially, professionally, personally, a lot about how do I work with other people to achieve a goal. A huge part of my work there was working with other people to complete projects. So practica and also classwork, and just how do we how do we do this together? Whereas before, I did see how that was important, but I also thought I could do most things by myself, really. And it wasn't until I went to a grad school that I really saw, no, it's definitely better with other people. We're going to be more effective. We're going to have diversity of thought, of opinions, of ways to do things. And that's actually going to make it stronger. And so I definitely learned that when I was at the Clinton School, and I learned how to facilitate, which I think is one of my greatest tools in just bringing people together and creating spaces where people can communicate, feel heard, feel respected, and feel like they're contributing. Facilitation is a really big part of that. And I was able to, when I worked there, work with so many amazing organizations that are doing phenomenal work in the Central Arkansas, all over Arkansas, really. Most of them in Central Arkansas, because I work with a Practica. experience, and I just got to know so many amazing community partners. That has, in turn, helped, develop partnerships, even moving into my work with the yarn and JCA.
Hmm. All right. So what I like to do, I have a few questions I always like to ask people. I got one more, but
Okay.
elevator pitch.
Oh,
Like, so if you had to give somebody an elevator pitch about why storytelling is important, what would you say to them?
my elevator pitch on why storytelling is important. Story Storytelling has the ability to bring us together as humans in a time when we have never been more divided. I would do my centos. And we do that through creating spaces where humans feel like they can share their lived experiences and other humans can say, I might not know exactly what you're going through, but I know how you feel. I know what that emotion is, and I can connect with you. And I see you as a human again. And we're not so different as we thought.
Very good. And I got another one. It's probably like my favorite question to ask people. Um, you do a lot in like whether it's the stuff at the yarn or your executive director work with just communities. It's a lot of work, and it can be. I know some days are probably tougher than others, and like it's not easy work. So like, what keeps you motivated about getting up and doing that every day and all things you do? And better yet, what is your why?
I want to be really real about this answer because, I mean, there have been, there have been difficult times throughout history, and everyone's difficult time, is it depends on what's going on with their life. It is difficult sometimes for me, especially now, to feel like this is making a difference, like this matters. So I do want to be real in that I do go through times of doubt with that, but I keep doing it because I have seen time and time again how the experience of people telling their stories changes those people. It's not even necessarily, when I first started doing this work, it was all about changing the audience's hearts and minds or creating a space for the audience to connect with the storyteller. It was more about how the audience was going to change than the storyteller. But since I've been doing this work for, I guess, since 2015 now, it's seeing how giving a platform, an opportunity for people to share their stories, what that does for that individual. And the lightness it creates, whether it's said to me or I'm just perceiving it, the joy that it brings, uh, people want to be heard and seen. And even if I can do that one by one person at a time, it might be not be like this huge. I might never be on, I'm on your show, so that's amazing. But I might never be, accepting a national award for that. But I'm I do feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives one by one, just by giving them an opportunity to share their story. Because everyone, you want to be seen.
Man, you just made me think of something. Um, have you ever heard the story about the little girl and the starfish?
Yeah, I do think about this. It is very starfish because there's so much going on that's so big. And so this work sometimes feels very small, but the faith that I have in the effect I'm having, at least for individuals. And if it's one person also who hears a story who feels less alone, that to me is worth it.
Man, yeah, that's so true. And I guess for the people watching this that have not heard this, so I didn't hear it till I was about to be on the news, and I was having a similar experience. I was talking to my friend Diane from Mid America Arts Alliance. I was telling her, it's like sometimes you feel like you do this work and like it doesn't matter. But with that story, to people that hadn't heard it, it's a little girl is out on the beach, and she's like a bunch of starfish have washed up on the shore, and she's taking them and throwing them. And it's like ton of them, and it feels like she's never gonna get them off. And some guy comes up and he says, Yo, why are you doing it? Like, it doesn't even matter. It's still, you're never gonna be able to get all this. It doesn't matter. And then she picks up the starfish and throws it in the water. I was like, it matters to him. I say that because I know it probably don't mean much, but your work does matter. It does matter. It's making a big impact. I know it's made an impact on my life and my family, like, different people I've seen do it. So I would just like to thank you on behalf of everybody in Arkansas and the community for all the good work that you do. Thank you for everything. And then thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come do this podcast, man.
I think it's amazing, and I would say the same for you. The work that you do and all the beauty that you put into the world and that you build into this community is it's seen and noticed and matters.
Oh man, thank you so much, Miss Hillary. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to watch the Process Podcast. If you guys like this, if you find it is meaningful or helpful, please be sure to like this, share it, and make sure you smash the subscribe button. Until next time, man, y'all be blessed and stay encouraged.